Well, hello everyone. I'm running a test right now, and for those people who may be popping in, or I don't know if you're popping in or not, hello. I'm just if you're here, go ahead and leave a comment in the stream right here, and I'll display it because I'm running more tests on StreamYard right now, just to see what we've got here. Let's see, what do we got? Hi, Damon. How are you? Hi, Nikki. Good to see you. I see Nikki is here. Let's see. Damon Robin is here as well. Hi, Damon Robin. Good to see you. Magic and Mundane. How are you, Magic and Mundane? I'm assuming that the people who have joined are actually you're actually subscribers of my YouTube channel. I would assume, correct? So, just let me know and tell me what your podcast is all about. Let's see, what do we got? Let's see. I see Raymond Gay's here. Hi, Raymond. Good to see you. But we are going to. Hi, Bayberg. Bayberg, didn't you reach out to me a few it was like a year ago, I think. Was that about a year ago? Was that you, I think? And I was doing a live feed direct from this bedroom. So let me know. So forgive me. I'm just running a couple of tests right now on the live streams. And I want to know, number one, how is the audio? How does the audio sound? Does it sound okay? Sound clear? Does it sound crappy? Does it sound not so crappy? Just let me know. Let me see. I'm moving some windows around here. I've got a really big screen now these days. Got a couple things going on here. Number one, haven't been on my YouTube channel in quite some time because by the time summer hit here in Phoenix, I think that was about June. It was the beginning of June, and it got so ridiculously hot. We just barely, like within the last couple days, barely got under 100 degrees, which has been crazy because we've had, I think, over the last 50% of the year has been over 100 degrees, and it's been so hot. And the room that I record in, all the walls except for the one behind me, is they're all block, and so they just kind of retain the heat so much. It gets really, really hot in here. So I haven't been recording any videos. I had like 3 fans in here at one point in time because it was so hot. So that's where I have been. Really, let's see here. Nikki has said she is allergy free hustle. Allergy free hustle is getting to know the founders of allergy free brands and the story behind their brands. That's awesome. The Magic and Mundane, my podcast is about non-atheist paganism. Bayberg says, yeah, probably. Maybe you were on one of my live feeds. I don't know. Perhaps. It was a long time ago that I did a live feed. See, Magic and Mundane says, audio sounds clear. Thank you. I'm glad that we were able to get the audio working and moving along. Do you guys have any questions about podcasts that you would like to ask me in the chat? You're more than welcome to ask me those questions as I continue to run a couple of diagnostic tests right now. And I'll hopefully be able to answer them for you. Okay. What do we got here? We'll go ahead and do this. Show that. Let's see. And how is your podcast going? Let's hear. Let's see. What do we got? I would love to know what how your podcasts are doing so far. Oh, excuse me. I got to get a little sip here. Was about to sign off, but check subscriptions just in case. Looks like I know what I'm doing for the next 30 to 90 minutes. Wait, what do you mean? Like on my live stream? Is that what you mean? Right here? Was about to sign off, but checked subscriptions just in case. Looks like I know what I'm doing for the next 30 to 90 minutes. Well, if you have questions, you can ask me right now. I am more than happy to answer those questions for you. Let's see here. Raymond says, see here. Raymond says, I love StreamYard. It is an awesome platform. Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Let's see here. Nikki asking, is getting reviews on your podcast extremely important? I would say they're important. It just depends on the platform. The platform that you're looking at, like if you're trying to get reviews, would be probably Apple Podcasts. So one of the podcasts that I'm editing right now, they did like a 2-month blitz of pushing people to go and give reviews on the podcast itself. And then after the 2-month blitz, then they read the reviews at the end of the show, and then that encouraged more reviews to come through and more people to write reviews. And so it's kind of like one of those things. It's like when you see a really good music album and you see that it's got a lot of stars, it's got a lot of great comments. It's kind of the same thing. Algorithmically, I can't give you the best answer on whether or not that's going to impact, how much of an impact it will have on Apple Podcasts. But I just know that if you're trying to gather a certain audience, that having good reviews is always a good thing. It's just they're really good testimonials. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Let's see here. Hi, Mrs. Buddha. Good to see you. Yes, I have been around. I've been behind the scenes, as I mentioned to people beforehand. I wouldn't say I was incapacitated. I would say that I was, I wouldn't even say immobilized. I would just say that with combination of, with coronavirus and the blistering summer heat that happened all year long here, I would say all year long, all summer long here in Phoenix, that it limited me to doing a lot. And then, of course, the air conditioner had a lot of problems. I had a portable air conditioner in here at one point in time. I bought an extra fan for this bedroom so I could keep it cool. And then I had another fan, a box fan, to just try and keep other things cool. So if I was to record something in this bedroom during that time, it would have just sounded like a big wind tunnel. And so it was just like, I'm not going to play with that. We'll just take a break. We'll take a break. I should have notified everyone, but I figured the videos would live on. Let's see here. Podcast is going okay. Having problem producing content consistently. I certainly understand that. What is the problem with producing consistently? Let's see. Podcast listeners seem to have picked up a lot since quarantine. Yeah, I think that is something that is a thing. I'm not going to lie. I think that is something that is a thing. The podcast that I am editing right now, they have gotten a lot of listeners. So that's a good thing. So I think the more consistent you are with the podcasts themselves, the better it will be for you to garner more listeners. I think that's going to really help out. So I think that's something that you should really kind of consider, is doing more consistent podcast content and just picking up more. You're going to get more listeners, obviously. There's a podcast that I listen to on video marketing, and the guy has been doing it since last year. I remember when he first started, and he has grown it over the course of the year, and he has made a lot of great connections. So it wasn't just necessarily him doing YouTube and talking about YouTube. In the beginning, that's all he did talk about. It was from a very technical standpoint. It was really more about doing YouTube from an ad standpoint. It wasn't necessarily doing YouTube from, I guess he was talking about some of the benefits of doing YouTube from an organic standpoint, but he was talking a lot about, the video ads. And I think, as the year rolled on, he realized that he just couldn't niche himself directly into YouTube. And so he ended up branching out. And this is around the time when TikTok ended up becoming pretty, starting to become more popular, even though TikTok has been around, but has gotten really, really, really popular. And so he started doing a lot more episodes on TikTok, or talking about TikTok, not necessarily on TikTok. He would use TikTok as a means to promote to his podcast. So, and he talks about some strategies that you would use, and that's a really good podcast. His name is Matt Johnston. If you ever are interested in listening to his podcast, it's very, very cool. Let's see. What do we got? Let's answer Bayberg. I think Bayberg's got something he wants to see. I'm more of a guest than a podcast host recently. With the plague spreading, there were a ton of opportunities to speak, everyone not worrying who is going to do post-production later. Yeah, I mean, being a guest kind of makes it a lot easier because you could just go on podcasts and be like, okay, I'm just going to talk about my thing and I don't have to promote. I don't have to produce anything. I don't have to do any production. And I think that's the hardest part whenever you really start to step up and develop your podcast, is that you really want to start developing and building more value in terms of the production value. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have production value. No, not necessarily, especially the way podcasts are these days. You don't have to have a whole lot of production these days because people just listen mainly for the content. But if you're someone who is like me, I like to have the production content and the production value that goes with it. Doesn't have to be super, super high quality, wild, crazy $1,000 productions. But, there are ways that you can make it happen and make it speedier. So I totally get being a guest on a podcast because there's way less production to do. You just let someone else do it. Let's see here. We have been doing great. Have been interviewed on 2 other shows in Cuba and Spain that speak about regattas. That's pretty cool. And how did those go for you? I'd be interested in knowing how those went for you. Let's see here. Nikki says, would you encourage podcasters to create content based on topic niche on social media, then start a podcast? I think you can start a podcast pretty much any time. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to start the social media right away. I've seen it done both ways. I've seen people have social media and then they start a podcast. And then I've seen people have a podcast and they start social media. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just going to be all about you and your consistency on building content. So you got to come up with a content calendar at least. And work ahead of time. I think working ahead is a huge thing because if you work ahead, it makes it a lot easier on you. Let's see here. How are podcasters using TikTok to promote their podcast? I can't honestly answer that because I just barely started a TikTok the other day. But if I had to venture out and guess, I would imagine that those people who are creating TikToks, and I don't know what kind of videos you would create. I mean, let's look at the guy who was on a longboard drinking ocean spray. I mean, that was just a total fluke. And now he's pushing into a lot of different areas. I mean, mainly what he's doing is just doing what he normally does. He just does the one thing that he normally knows how to do, and that is just be himself. And so I would say and encourage a podcaster, if they want to jump on TikTok, that you're always pushing someone to go to your website to listen to your podcast. That's going to be pretty important. You could always push them to a Spotify. You could always push them to an Apple podcast. You could push them to, Google Podcasts. You could push them to anywhere, any place. But you have to remember that, people listen on different platforms. And so that's why I always recommend pushing them to a website, because there you have all the information listed and then they can choose which platform they want to listen to. That's why I always say, have a website. That's like the biggest thing. That's one of the things that I get a lot. I mean, I still get a lot of people who come to my website and looking for answers and questions that come through, and people say, I don't really need to necessarily have a website, but I think that whenever you're using your website as a tool, that really just makes it a lot easier. So you don't have to just say listen to us on Spotify. You have to remember that there's also a segment of people that listen on Castbox. You have a segment of people that listen on Player FM. There's just segments of people that listen in certain areas. So I would much rather they go to the website. And of course, sending them to a website is also it's a pro tip play. That's a pro play. You're getting them on your website, and if you have things to offer to them on your website, that's always a good thing. Let's see, Mrs. Buddha. It went well. It was interesting. They also asked us how it is that our podcast sounds so professional. We laughed. We said to check out Shanman on YouTube. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's kind of you. Yeah, I don't know how much more professional I can make it, right? I don't have my production tools up on my website or up on my YouTube. I have those as a training course on my website. So, by the way, if anyone is in the market for a webcam with lots of extra functionality, try Insta360. 1R, it's modular, does 360 and standard 4K, plugs into the PCs and Macs, hands-off framing AI. That's interesting. I've seen some stuff on 360. I personally don't think I would use anything that's 360. Probably just more one-on-one type of stuff. But I would imagine like I probably could see and justify using a 360 camera for like say a music performance if there was a band or something like that and there was an audience. I would do that. But since we're not doing audiences right now, it kind of makes it hard. Stuck in my mind. I just want to say your videos has helped me so much. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for subscribing to my channel, Stuck in My Mind. I appreciate it. Is there one particular video that has helped you out specifically that you have utilized for your own podcast? I'd be interested in hearing about that. It's always fun to like come on these live feeds, these impromptu live feeds, because I don't ever really promote them. I just come on because I have to run a test on something. So it's always the interesting thing. So for the most part, but I am planning on releasing some more videos coming up in the coming weeks. Some things that have happened. I've got a Mac over here that I've had since 2013, I think. And if you follow my Twitter, you've seen that like I've been waiting on a brand new Mac. And the brand new Mac is a 2020 version of a MacBook Pro. Cannot wait to get it. The reason why I cannot do much on this Mac reason why I really can't do much anymore right now is because the Mac is so old and it takes forever to render the videos. So that's another thing that has gone on at the same time of all this stuff. So everything has just been crazy with quarantine and I mean, I don't even know, like, is anyone really even quarantining these days anymore? I know I'm staying home. I don't call it quarantine. I just say I'm staying home. But, with everything, it's just like everyone acts like it's such a political thing, and it's really not. I'm just staying home because I really don't go out anyway. So I figured it was Mrs. Suarez. I listened to you and purchased a domain, and we've been posting our links to the podcast and the YouTube channel. Awesome. That's really good to hear that you are doing that. Just because, if you have the domain and you have the something, it's always good to push them somewhere. Always good to push them somewhere. So with that, so I've got a new computer coming, a brand new Mac. It'll be coming in about, I think it's coming on Monday. So I'll be able to create some new videos. I've got some ideas for some new videos that I want to share. And we'll just kind of see how that works out. But for the most part, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm kind of excited to get started with building videos out again. Someone reached out to me a few weeks ago. Actually, two people reached out to me. And hopefully I'll be working with them as I continue to build out brand new content. So that'll be kind of a cool thing. And I have been considering and playing with this idea of building out my own podcast for people. So that's something that I'm going to probably do here in the coming, hopefully, weeks. I don't know. We'll just kind of have to see. Between editing multiple podcasts and then doing my own thing, it gets a little overwhelming at times. So, or editing other people's podcasts, I should say. So it gets a little overwhelming at times. Let's see. There is a question that hasn't shown up on the chat. I mean, I see it right here. It's showing up on the chat over here from Around the Clock. Here it is. So I'm subscribed to your channel, but YouTube isn't showing you in my timeline. Do you know why that is? Probably because I have not posted a video in quite some time. However, the videos should be showing up regardless. If you like a video, they should still be showing up in the timeline themselves. So that should be a thing that that would be a factor in you seeing any of my videos. So that might be a thing. So I don't know. Let's see here. Bayerberg. I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm based in London. Yeah, I do remember you. Yeah, I remember you were in London. I'm based in London. Weather does the quarantine for us. Who would go out when the weather forecast specifies rain flavors? Well, here's the thing. It's funny that you say that because, here in Arizona, I read the forecast for the next 7 days. And we have sunshine. Oh, I don't have my phone. It's in the other room. We have sunshine for the next, I would say, 6 days, 5 days. And then what is that? 6 days, I think. And then on 7th day, we've got rain coming on Monday, which is very unusual. It's just like 1 day of rain, and then that's it. So, and that's a 30% chance. So, there is more likely a 60% chance that I will be going out for a walk on that day. So, if I lived in London, I probably would be sticking at home. So I totally get it. If you're just joining this live stream, do me a favor. And if you have a question about podcasting, what is there something that you would love to see more from me? If there's something more that you would like me to do on this YouTube channel, leave it in the comments or the chat, and then I would love to hear what you have to say. Would it be more live streams? Would it be more produced videos? One of the things I did get, I forgot to mention, I got a brand new, let me grab it. I got a brand new camera. And so I got a brand new Sony A6400 for filming. So I will be using this for my videos in the coming weeks. So I cannot wait to be using that camera. So I've spent lots of money in the last I would say month and a half. There's just, so there's a lot of money coming out of my pockets right now, but it's all for podcasting. It's all for podcasters, all to help podcasters. So I'm excited about that. So we'll just kind of have to see where we go from there. Let me check on my little diagnostics here, what we got. The diagnostics I'm running are on this laptop, particularly for streaming. And let me see. Make sure that I've got everything working. If you're just joining the live stream right now, I see there's a solid 10 people in the live stream right now. So if you're just joining, do me a favor and let me know where you're from, and let me know what your podcast is about, and let me know if there's something that you would love to see more from me on my YouTube channel. So let me see here. I see another comment come through. Let me see. What equipment do I need to record an episode of a podcast with 2 or more people in the same room? Well, there's different. Hi, Carl Barcelos, I think is how you say your name. So I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Let me see here. I'm going to show your comment around the clock. So what equipment do I need to record an episode of a podcast with 2 or more people in the same room? And are there any that won't bankrupt me? I mean, the way I would reframe that is, it's not necessarily about how much money you spend. It's about whether the tool can work for you. So what I always recommend to all my people who come to this channel and they are looking for podcasting information, I always recommend to them to get the Yamaha MG10XU. In fact, you know what I'll do is you guys get to see my rat's nest here. So I'll show you real quick. This is the mixing board that I'm using right now. And that is what I use for this. As you can see, it's got multiple inputs that you can use. So, this will do the job for multiple people. You can use that particular mixing board, or I've seen people that have used a Zoom H6. The only thing that I have, reason why I wouldn't use a Zoom H6 portable is just because it makes it a little more difficult, but that's just how I do my things. I do everything on a Yamaha, and I all throw it into Adobe Audition, and it just makes the process so much easier. But you're more than welcome to use, a Zoom H6. They cost about the same amount, so you're talking about $300. But you have to kind of remember too that you're going to be buying that piece of equipment one time and one time only, and that's going to be it. So, once you use that, then hopefully at that point in time, you're able to start implementing and developing strategies to where you can, start making that money back. So, I talk about that in my trainings all the time. It's just like, don't worry about the cost. I mean, I would say, like, if you're thinking about getting something that's $1,000, I would say maybe that's a little overboard. But, $300, I mean, I think the majority of the things that I've purchased, other than this microphone, when I first got started, the mixing board, the microphone, and the XLR cable, and it was probably a total of like $400, $500, and then that was about it. So let me see here. Let me answer some more questions. Let me see. Should I podcast during a pandemic? Was a very helpful video. Well, great. I'm glad to hear that. What did you find so interesting and helpful in that video? Stuck in my mind also says he uses a Rodecaster Pro. Yeah, so you could use a Rodecaster Pro. I mean, that is probably the closest thing that I've seen to a radio station mixing board. It is by far the closest to what a radio station looks like with faders and all that. The Yamaha MG10XU would be probably like the updated version of what radio mixers used to look like back in the 60s and 70s with knobs, except other than the fact that the knobs were gigantic back then. So it really is going to be up to your preference. If you're willing to spend that $600 for the Rodecaster, then yeah, go get the Rodecaster. But if you're still like, I need something that's a little more just functional, you could use the Yamaha. But the Rodecaster does have a lot of nice little bells and whistles. It's actually a board that I want to consider getting eventually at one point in time. Let's see here. Secrets of the radio personalities. More juicy morsels about what radio pros do to sound better. Your previous videos touching on the subject translate to the podcast world in 99%. I'm glad that those videos have helped out. Yes. So I think that there's this thing. I'm going to leave that up. I think there's this thing that comes with podcasting, especially it was a couple of years ago. I wouldn't even say a couple of years ago. I mean, when I went to Podcast Movement, probably that was like 5 years ago. Podcasters, I think, felt as though podcasting had to be a certain thing. And I just saw podcasting turning in the direction of radio. That's the direction that I saw it going. And I just saw like, well, you could create a podcast where it's storytelling podcasts. And those storytelling podcasts would require a lot of production. But I saw the majority of podcasts turning into more like radio productions. And with radio, of course, you have a lot of, bells and whistles, kind of like the Rodecaster Pro, but you have a lot of mixers, you have a lot of shortcut keys. I mean, there's a lot of things that involve a radio studio. I mean, I don't even have that stuff here at my house. I'm relying on iPads and phones and to kind of replicate that type of workflow when it comes down to it. But I think with podcasters, when it came down to going to that podcast movement, most of them wanted to be an exclusive club and say like, oh no, podcasting is way different than radio. And in some respects it is. But I would say that podcasting and radio has to coexist. Radio is now in the game of podcasting. And so now you're seeing radio transform podcasts into radio programs, but you're also seeing podcasters transform their programs into radio. So both can coexist, and there's just little tricks and tools and tips of the trade that can be taken from both areas. So I think that's something that's very important for podcasters to understand. So that's a really good comment that you had there. Carl Barcelos, do you take clients and help with getting started in their podcast here in Phoenix? I do, Carl. Reach out to me on my website, theshanman.com. Let me see here if I can post the comment here, or maybe see if I can post. Or just reach out to me on Instagram. You can go onto my Instagram or Facebook. All my social links are found on my website at theshanman.com on the bottom of the page. So just reach out to me, and we can talk and hopefully get you started with your podcast. What is the podcast that you're looking to start? Let's see here. Around the clock, the mixing board looks complicated. Are they easy to get a hang of? Yes, they are very easy to get a hang of. I've said this countless times. I just did a webinar recently on this. The mixing boards, they look complicated, but they aren't. If you know how to use one of the channels, then you know how to use all of them. That's really what it is. Don't let the knobs and the buttons confuse you. I think a lot of podcasters let that stuff bother them, especially when it comes down to like the Yamaha or the Rodecaster. Nothing is complicated. It just takes, let's put it this way. Anytime someone comes to me and says, I need help with software, I need help learning how to use StreamYard, I need help learning how to set up my website in Kajabi, I need help. And then I show them, and then they go, oh, that was pretty easy. And a lot of it just has to do with studying the software the same way it is that you would have to do with the hardware. You just have to study the hardware. You got to take some time to study the hardware. Same thing is happening right now with me and this camera. I have to study a lot about the camera because I don't know how to use the camera. I'm used to just normal point and shoot with an iPhone, right? So you just got to know, and you have to take the time to study. I think that's important for podcasters. So they are easy once you start to study and learn them. Mrs. Buddha, we record our live shows, then we take them down and put them in audio format to upload on our podcast. Do you agree with that? Yeah, I don't see a problem with doing that at all. Also, is there a better way to transition to a different subject? Yeah, that's a really good question to ask right there. Is there a better way to transition to a different subject? Typically, when you have a guest and they come in and they start talking and you ask them a question, let's just say like you ask them a question on, let's say, something literary, and you say like, well, what's the importance of hyperbole in specific text that will help change the emotion of someone's decision on how they, want to vote? Let's just say it like that, okay? And that person gives this detailed answer of what hyperbole is all about, and they'll just go really further into the topic, right? You don't necessarily have to say like, okay, I want to keep moving forward. All you have to do, and this is just the trick, and you see it on TV all the time. You just say, okay, I want to switch gears and ask a different question. You say, I want to switch gears, or let's move into a different area. So you're giving that transition. You're saying like, oh, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I want to really take it into a different area that I'm really interested in. So I would say that utilizing that technique of transitioning the topic from one to another would mean that like you can ask all these really, I guess I wouldn't call them mundane, but they're not as important. These questions that are less critical, and you can ask them those questions in succession of however you want. But when you want to go to the question that you want to get the real meat of the answers, maybe it's the whole reason why you're having that podcast, is you would probably transition and say, okay, I want to switch gears and let's really move into this area of social media and how it applies to authors, and it applies to literary scholars. And that's just one way that you can talk about those topics and transition those topics over. I hope that does help. Let's see. I would like to know how to price promotions. Can you be more specific about that? Be a little more specific about that. Let me see here. That episode helped me decide to start podcasting. I'm glad to hear that podcasting during a pandemic has helped you out. Let's see here. Back to basics video would be great. Great to reboot the channel. The amount of podcast intros over 5 seconds is too damn high. What are you talking about? The podcast intros over 5 seconds is too damn high. Are you talking about the people who like have the podcast intros on their audio podcast? Is that what you're talking about? Where it's like a 30-second podcast intro and it's just like, okay, let's get to the topic. That's one thing that I always tell podcasters. I say like, look, hey, no one needs to hear your 40-second intro, your 40-second produced intro. If it's going to be something that's branded, it needs to be 5 to 7 seconds. I mean, if you're doing that, just something simple and short. That's something that I've been thinking about wanting to do, is developing and doing like kind of a Saturday seminar where I teach people how to create branded podcasts, like branding for themselves, like production wise, and how to create in production software, how to create those things. They call that imaging and branding. And so just like you would see with Photoshop, how people create a visual brand for something, you do the same thing with audio, with sounds. And so there are people that know how to do this. They're difficult to find sometimes, depending on, and the reason why they're difficult to find is because maybe it's not something that you really enjoy, or it doesn't match maybe your brand or your feeling. You just got, you have a hard time finding those people. And so I want to be able to teach people how to do those things. I'll show them my way of doing things. And then of course, then they can take that and run with it for themselves. So I haven't decided on when I would want to do that particular training itself. That's just something that's in the works, that I have been thinking about. So that's just something that I'm thinking about right now. Silver Fox DJ. Hello, it's so good to see you, Silver Fox DJ. Thank you for joining on the channel. How long have you been subscribed? What's your podcast about? And let me know how long you've been podcasting. I'd love to hear about that. Let's see. Mrs. Buddha, some of the restaurants in Puerto Rico wants us to promote their business on our podcast, but we don't know how to price them. So what kind of businesses are they? That's the first question that I would ask. Like, what kind of businesses are they? Now, here's the thing. Like, I want to do more of these live feeds because sometimes I feel as though, I need to really get into the questions. I need to know more. I need to know more of like what people are asking. So this is a really interesting question, and I guess I can give you the best answer that I can. Okay, when it comes down to this question, or maybe this statement that's on the screen. So some of the restaurants in Puerto Rico wants us to promote their business on our podcast, but we don't know how to price them. Now I have somewhere on my channel, I just can't remember where, but I have a formula in which you could price certain spots or sponsorships for your podcast. It just really kind of all depends. I will say this when it comes down to getting sponsorships, unless you're getting like 10,000 downloads per day, you're probably not going to make a whole lot of money. But what you can do is you can always put a price on that for a particular client, maybe per month, maybe you're doing it per week, maybe it's per download. But I have some formula that I have written down. I don't particularly use it, but I have created, or I've not created, I found it and see other podcasters using it. And it's all based on the amount of downloads that you get. So it really just kind of all depends. Maybe I address that in a future video for you. Let's see. Bearberg coming back. 15-second stingers. Come on, people. People want to hear you, not the music. Yeah, I get that a lot with people who say like, oh, people got to hear my stinger. They got to hear my bump. They got to hear my sweep. And I'm like, oh, no. Like, I don't need to hear that. Now, if you're going to have music, at least make it a music bed that you can talk over. And this is all about like the flow of a podcast. If you're going to have a stinger, or if you're going to have a sweeper or a drop, that's what we call them in radio. They're the things that are in between music, and you can use them in talk radio, and you can use them in in podcasting. Stingers and bumpers and drops, they don't need to be like 15 seconds. They have to be very short so you can keep the story rolling. But if you're going to talk and have a music bed, you might as well talk over the music bed. I mean, that's what professional broadcasters have been doing since the dawn of caveman, So let's see. Chase Porter. Good to see you, Chase Porter. How are you? Good to see you. Excuse me, I'm over here drinking this drink. I'm going to have to run here in a bit because not quite yet, but I got to get ready for work. I got to be on the radio in like 2 hours. 2 hours. It's going to be 5 o'clock here. So we're going to do that. Let's see here. Could you do a video on podcast advertising? I got some actually. Well, I don't know what you mean by podcast advertising. I don't know what that means because like, are you talking about production? Are you talking about pricing? Or what are you talking about? Because you can go down many different avenues for that. I have a guide on my website that talks all about sponsorships and advertising right there. So you might want to check that out on my website. Let's see. What do we got? Stuck in my mind. I'm podcasting out of Pennsylvania. I've been subscribed to your channel for about 7 months. Awesome. That's very cool to hear. Yeah, I've seen that the channel has grown without me doing anything really, so that's been kind of good. I still go into the comments section, and I still comment a lot. So if you're just joining on this live stream, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go on. I'm going to stay on here for about another 8 to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to split because I've got to actually, believe it or not, this is me unshowered today. So I haven't showered yet today. So I gotta get in there, gotta go get a shower, and I haven't even exercised. So first I gotta exercise, and then I'm gonna go shower, and then we gotta head on out. But if you have a question about something specific about podcasting, or is there a way I can help you out, let me know in the comments section. I'll be happy to answer that. Like Nikki wants me to do a video on podcast advertising. I need to know a little bit more about what you're talking about in that particular topic, just because there's so much you can go into. The guide that I have on my website talks about so much on podcast advertising, and that's another like Saturday seminar that I want to do for podcasters. I want to be able to show them exactly what you can do with podcast advertising, and a lot of it combines pricing, but also combines production. You have to implement production, so you got to be skillful in production. Not all the time though. That's something that I think that can get misconstrued at times. You don't need to have necessarily production skills, but you need to know exactly where to put sponsorships. You need to know exactly where to mention sponsorships. You need to know what types of sponsorships there are. There's different types. There's things called billboards. I mean, it just really kind of all depends on what you're looking at in terms of advertising. So there's so much that you have to kind of dive into in order to understand and make it a little easier on yourself. Chase Porter. Doing good, Shannon. Recently found your channel and have learned a lot to apply to my podcast. Funny story, I do a solo show, which I've been trying to make more unscripted. Expected 30 minutes. It got to 2 hours. Yeah, it's funny whenever it comes down to podcasting that when you start to podcast, we'll go here. I'll get to you in a second, Silver Fox DJ. When it comes down to you getting on a microphone, you find that I think people underestimate themselves when it comes down to presenting on a microphone, because how we present things over a microphone and how we have to explain things to people on a microphone differs than what goes on in our mind. And so when we say like, oh, I need to express this thought and it has to be done in 3 steps, and you can do that. And, I struggle with this a lot myself when it comes down to explaining steps. And I've been told by countless people on this particular channel, they say like, oh, your video on how to get rid of the buzz on your microphone is too long and it's extended. And that happened a lot in the very beginning of the beginning of this YouTube channel. And it really used to discourage me a lot when people would just like come with their hate, and blowtorching their hate onto me. Then I realized, I thought, you know what? I don't really care about those people, because I do prefer to explain a little further in depth about the process that I use to create no buzz on a microphone, or to eliminate silence out of a recording, or how to denoise something, and going through those steps, because there are people out there who appreciate the step by step, especially now on the most recent videos that I've got. There are time codes on each of those videos to say like, okay, I want to accommodate the people who will listen to the podcast or listen to the video, even though maybe they're not watching the video. Because, let's be real. I mean, you're watching video, you're seeing me, but you're really just hearing a podcast, right? But there's time codes down in the description of most of those videos, those recent videos, where someone can skip to the answer that they want. So then I started to realize that, when it came down to speaking about saying like, oh, I'm going to have a 30-minute podcast, if the content is going to engage someone, then you just keep going with it. Like, I wouldn't say I don't like to, but I don't want to keep the information to myself completely if it's going to help someone else out. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I totally get what you mean when you say like you expected 30 minutes and you did 2 hours. So as long as it was engaging, it might be good for them. All right. Let me answer this question from Silver Fox DJ. I'm a disability navigator wanting to start a video podcast on mental health and disability integration in the workplace. I need to learn to edit, thinking to script, thoughts on video editing software sites. So this is an interesting question, because I just had this question with someone recently, Albin from Buzzsprout, and we were talking behind the scenes, and we were talking about how podcasters, first of all, I don't ever want to discourage anyone from not doing a video podcast, but I think that they should know what they're getting into when it comes down to doing video podcasts. This right here could be probably a very simple video podcast itself on my YouTube channel. Like, very simple, right? But what I don't think podcasters who are jumping into video for the first time understand is that there is a lot that goes into the process of video podcasting. So I'm going to start from like a couple steps for you. I don't want to discourage you. I want to be able to answer that question for you. Let me move this camera down so you can see my face a little more. So number one, if you're going to do a video podcast, all right, you're going to do a video podcast. Let's say you're going to be doing it on YouTube Live, or let's say Facebook Live. Everyone knows Facebook Live, right? Let's say you do that. Well, you need to consider and think about, well, do I need to have the equipment to make it sound great? Okay, great. Let's say we have that equipment. Okay. Do I have the processing power on my computer to handle hour-long renders of a podcast. That's possibly going to be one of the most important things that you have to think about when it comes down to doing a video podcast, okay? The reason why I am getting a whole brand new Macintosh is because this computer cannot handle renders anymore. And we're only talking about doing 15-minute videos that I want to put up on my YouTube channel. I can't even do that right now. So you got to really kind of consider those things. You got to consider, is there going to be graphics? You got to consider, is there going to be music? Because that all adds up into the data that's going to be going into the video. Okay, now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to discourage you from doing your video whatsoever, video podcast, all right? When it comes down to doing video, I would say that if you want it done simply and you have a Mac, I would say use ScreenFlow. That's probably going to be the easiest software that you can use. Now, if you can't use ScreenFlow and you don't have a Mac, there's Camtasia. You can use Camtasia, and that will do the job for you. But if you're looking to graduate into something better, where you have cool transitions and you have cool titles and whatnot, title screens and everything, you probably would need to go into Adobe Premiere. But let's go down a different rabbit hole, okay? Let's say you just want to create a podcast that is like Joe Rogan, and it's very simple, and it's just, an opening screen, and you just go. That might just be all you need, and that, I would say, is enough for you to start a podcast, a video podcast, if you're not concerned about editing any of the content out, all right? If you're concerned about the editing of the content, that's going to take so much time. There's a particular strategy that podcasters who are doing video podcasts that they use in order to get their podcast or get ears onto their podcast that I could talk about at another time. But that's just something to think about for yourself, Silver Fox DJ. I would say that if you're going to do it Joe Rogan style, and you don't want to do any editing, I would say just get on a YouTube Live or a Facebook Live and do it that way, and you're set to go. But if you want to promote it, then you're probably going to have to pull down that video and cut the clips out. I would use ScreenFlow or I would use Camtasia. ScreenFlow for Mac is pretty affordable, but Camtasia for a PC, it can be a little expensive, and that's just something to think about. So as far as Descript is concerned, I don't know about video editing in Descript. I have been playing around with Descript. I don't know if they do video editing. I just know that it is still slightly, it's still in the process of becoming better. Let's just put it that way. But I have been using Descript for certain things. So that's a great question. Thank you so much. Let's see. I'm going to go to Adrian Johnson. Is it easier to grow podcasting with video on YouTube than it is just audio on an audio podcast platform? So this is a cool question. This is a really cool question. I mean, I might answer this in another video. We'll see what happens, okay? So is it easier to grow podcasting with video on YouTube? So when it comes down to YouTube and doing podcasts on YouTube, we have to think about, there's plenty of people who can talk about this probably way better than I can, okay? But I know from what my experience is in putting these videos up on YouTube, my experience is that you create content for the platform itself and what people will like. So when we think about creating content for the platform, let's say YouTube itself, all right? Most of the content that I know I consume is between 5 to 10 minute increments. That's it. That's all I'm getting. It's probably, excuse me, it's probably becoming something that is a little more, that watch time is becoming more, it's increasing a lot more now that we have Netflix, YouTube TV, Hulu, all that. So if you can create content that is going to engage people over time, you will probably likely get people who will watch your YouTube video, okay? But there comes a caveat with that. Since YouTube is a search engine, it's the second largest search engine beneath Google because it's owned by Google. I consider, this is the way I do it, I consider YouTube as a search engine. I consider YouTube as a means to have myself discovered on YouTube. All the little things that I have in my descriptions are little breadcrumbs that will lead people to go to my podcast, my website, or wherever. Now, let's flip that on its head, all right? Let's say it's more of a podcast that you're creating. You create a podcast. Is it more difficult to get an audience just doing a podcast? Again, you're talking about wanting your podcast to be discovered in certain areas. So you're going to have to implement a couple of things. Number one, you're going to have to implement an SEO strategy with a website, with show notes. This is something that I preach so much to people. And I say, if you don't have an audience whatsoever, you're going to have to push towards getting people to discover you organically with SEO and show notes. So you got to have SEO and show notes, search engine optimization, show notes for SEO, and have that on your website. Number two, you would need to push those individual podcast episodes out onto social media, into groups, and get people to go back to your website to listen to that podcast. All right. That's how you start growing a base. In the beginning, it's very slow to do this. It's very slow. Even on this YouTube channel, when I first start, I still have the calendar up over here of when I first started this YouTube channel in 2019. And I have the date written down. It says May of 2017. And I had 941 subscribers. And those subscribers were specifically just from the radio station themselves, right? But when I started developing and transforming this whole channel into a podcast channel, it started to grow, and I wrote all of the growth that came onto that. I stopped counting by, let's see here, October of 2018. I stopped at 3,571 subscribers. So now fast forward, we're in the middle of almost at the end of 2020, and I almost have 10,000 subscribers. If I would have focused more on this channel, I probably could have double that. So you have to understand that consistency of developing and pushing content out is going to be very important, and promoting it, but you have to have that SEO there as well. Does that answer your question? Let's see. Bear, getting to the point quickly, bane of my existence, got rid of the ums and you knows. Can't condense my thoughts professionally yet. English as a second language is not an excuse. I need practice. Well, I would say this is something that is interesting, because there's going to be two people, and I recorded a video on this that I actually have rendered out onto, it's on my computer. I just can't, I may have mistakes on it, and I don't want to publish it because it's got mistakes in it. It's got some things I need to re-record. So when it comes down to having ums and you knows, there's going to be two camps to this. And I've mentioned this in that video. There's going to be the camp of people who say, like, I can't have ums and you knows in my podcast. And then there's going to be the camp of people who say, like, I don't care. I don't care if I have ums and you knows and and all that. I fall into that category because I believe personally, doesn't have to mean that you personally have to believe this, but I believe personally that when I share my thoughts authentically, that I come off more authentic. It doesn't sound so chopped up. It doesn't sound like an audiobook. And I personally don't want it to sound like an audiobook. I want it to sound like I'm having a conversation. Having a podcast where you're doing it solo, kind of like what we're doing right now, can be so difficult at times, because you have to come up with the topic, or you have to come up with the content to talk about. One of the things that I have learned, and I still struggle with it, but one of the things I've learned is that you have to think ahead of what you want to talk about. Will I and add filler words into the things that I will be talking about? Yeah, I'm going to do that. And can I go into post-production and remove them through Descript? Yeah, I can do that. But you can hear those cuts, and it sounds like an audiobook, and I don't want an audiobook. I want a podcast. I want it to sound interactive. I want people to see that. So that's just my take. It doesn't necessarily mean that it could be your take. So I would say to become a better presenter just takes practice. That would be my advice, I guess. Nikki, buying ads to promote podcasts, is this recommended? So if you're going to buy ads, I would assume, okay, this is what I'm going to assume with this right here. I'll try to answer this the best I can. Buying ads to promote podcasts, is this recommended? I would only recommend it if you know what you're going, if there's going to be a result for yourself down the line, being that if you're going to spend money on Facebook, if you're going to spend money on YouTube, if you're going to spend some money where you're promoting the podcast and an ad, and it's pushing them to your website, I would hope that you're getting them on an email list. That's probably one of the most important things that I always promote to podcasters. If you're going to spend money in ads, make sure you're getting them on an email list on your website. Just don't promote them to go get subscribers, because if you promote to get subscribers, what if these platforms go away one day? I mean, probably won't, but what if? I mean, let's think about this a couple months ago, or it was like a month ago. Donald Trump was threatening to get rid of TikTok in the United States. What if that platform had gone away? That's why it's important to push people to a website to get on an email list. So if you're going to spend ads, get them to your website to get on an email list to become a part of your universe, okay? Around the clock, can you recommend a quality editing program? I'm currently using Audacity to edit my podcast, but I'd like something that produces better sounding final product, but that isn't too hard to learn. I would say that this isn't necessarily more about the program, although, I mean, I guess I should say, yeah, it is, kind of is. I would say it's more about the workflow of making things sound more professional. You would have to know how to create the workflow of your podcast in order to get a better sounding final product. The one that I recommend is Adobe Audition. I know that seeing that program always seems like it's intimidating, but it really isn't. It's the same question about, like, the mixing board looks intimidating. It really isn't intimidating. You just got to know where to go, and you have to study it. And if you have a way, or if you have a method in place or a workflow in place, then it makes it so much easier. This is how I'm able to edit podcasts, like hour-long podcasts, and do them in 20 minutes, whereas I see podcasters taking 6 hours to edit one podcast, and I just think that's ridiculous. So I would recommend Audition if you have the money to do that. Once you get proficient at Audition, man, you could do so much. I mean, it's just impossible. I mean, it's just, in this day and age, I don't see a reason why you shouldn't be using Audition. There's other podcasts, or there's other audio editing programs out there like Hindenburg, that if you're doing more of a storytelling podcast, really is just going to depend on you. Okay. But you have to know those workflows. Let's see here. Silver Fox DJ, definitely solo. Just talking easy peasy. Yeah. I would say that, like, if you're going to do video podcasts, just come on here, do a video podcast like this. But if you were looking to promote it, there's a different strategy that goes into that. I have a whole training course on that I've created that I need to release. The Simulacra, I think is how you say that. I may be mispronouncing that. Podcast. I just started my own podcast. Your video on how to record one with Zoom was inspiring. Humble beginnings. Very cool. I'm glad that one has helped out 100%. A lot of people visit that video. That's where I'm getting a lot of my subscribers from right now. If you're looking to buy a 13-inch MacBook Pro, choose 2.0. Oh, dude, I've got a quad-core spec or up. It has a 10th generation processor and quicker memory. Oh, bro, I went all out on this one. I got an i9 with an 8-core. Was it 8 core? What was that? I got it right here. Hang on. 2.3 gigahertz, 8-core, 9th generation i9 processor with 32 gigs of RAM. I think I'm going to be hooked up for a while. I spent a lot of money on this, so I'll be good. Let's see. You guys are keeping me on here. Let's see. Hi, let's see here. Mocha K. Hi, Mocha K. Good to see you. Since COVID-19, so many celebrities are starting podcasts since they can't tour and do appearances. They are making major ad deals. Is it harder now to get advertising for everyday podcasters? No, it's not harder. I recommend to podcasters and say to them that I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket when it comes to getting advertisers. Podcasters have a need to implement. I don't like using that word, need. Podcasters should be implementing a multiple income strategy, okay, or multiple line of income strategies. So I would say that sponsorships and advertising are just one piece of the puzzle, one piece of, like, let's say, like 7 pieces of the puzzle. And we're talking about that it's not that difficult of a puzzle. Advertising just happens to be one of them, okay? A lot of podcasters that I see right now that are doing it, and they aren't necessarily celebrity podcasters. They are people who are doing, Patreon style podcast. I do this for my own side stuff that I do with my radio station stuff. I have something called a supporter program that I do through Facebook, and supporters come in and they donate their stars that they give me, and that counts as a monetary form of income for me. And it just depends. I mean, some months are really, really great. Other months aren't as good as the previous month, but they're still pretty darn good. And I will tell you this, Mocha K, that if you implement something that is similar to that, that is a really good source of income for you. Advertising just doesn't necessarily have to be all about that. You have to also think about affiliate marketing and think about the products that you use for your own personal podcasts or the things that you do. You know, maybe it's software that you use. Does it have an affiliate program? Think about that. That might help you out. Let's see. Great question, by the way. Great question. Silver Fox DJ. Absolutely. Great tip. Got site. Love SEO and writing. Got to do research and all the homework. All on point. Good. I'm glad that this has all helped out. I'm considering doing more of these for like on a Zoom call where I invite people on a Zoom call and then we answer these questions. So, but for now, we're just doing them. We're doing them right now, just kind of off the cuff. Let's see. Your points about YouTube are very true. I get my best viewership here, but that's because discoverability is very good. Socials have been fruitful for me. I need to try and get into groups yet. Yeah, YouTube, I look at it as more of a discovery tool rather than a viewing tool, if that makes sense. I don't look at it as like TV. I look at it as like I'm going to get quick nuggets. I'm getting bites, snacks of things, and that will lead them down the pathway, and the breadcrumbs will lead them to me. So that's how I look at that. 17-year-old started a podcast. Any tips on how to be a better host? Ask better questions, not get nervous in a recorded conversation. Practice, man. You just got to practice, dude. That's going to be the biggest thing that you got to do is practice and continue to podcast that, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get better. Need those editing tips. Let's see here. Bayerberg Booth Junkie has great videos on how to soundproof your studio. Quick, cheap enough way up the quality of your podcast. Yeah, if you're looking to like eliminate echoes and things like that, I mean, you can get those booths, I'm sure, that surround you, but just really kind of gonna depend. I did over the summer, and I haven't finished it yet, but I added some soundproofing to my walls because I have these block walls, and what I ended up doing was getting these styrofoam boards and then putting actual soundproofing on them and gluing them. And that has deadened the sound of this bedroom a little bit. So I plan on doing it more on the walls so I can deaden the sound just a little bit more. That's a good, yeah, I'm going to have to reach out to Booth Junkie. Let's see here. Hi, guys. Excited to be here. Thanks, Shannon, for sharing. You're welcome, Average Fellas Podcast. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate it. Sorry I'm getting into the comments so late here. Let's see here. I'm using Podgo and Podcorn for ads. Yeah, I mean, I would say explore, but I mean, I think that you probably can get more money if you go and search for advertisers on your own without going through a third party, because you're always going to pay them a fee. But if you're okay with having them paying a fee, it's the same thing like with, let's say, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to roll. That's the same thing like, say, with Anchor. People are like, oh, you can monetize on Anchor, but then you have to remember that Anchor takes a cut, and then I believe they take a cut, and then I don't think you have to like have so much in terms of downloads in order to get a certain amount. I can't say for sure on that. I just recommend doing it on your own because you're gonna get all the money that you deserve as opposed to getting just a cut of it. Let's see here. Not social media ads, but using podcast platforms to promote your podcast, but you would pay a certain amount of money based on the podcast category. I would say that give you the same answer on this. If you're going to spend money anywhere, you need to have a plan to get them onto your website somehow. That's just. If you're going to pay it to be on a platform, I mean, someone's making money off of you, but you better hope that traffic is going to drive traffic back to you, your website, or your podcast. You got to have to figure out what your goal is going to be. Average Fellas Podcast. What's your favorite part of podcast production? What's your least favorite? I would say that it just depends on the podcaster, or I would say let's say the client. For me, it's not necessarily. I don't have a problem with it really. I think when it comes down to me building podcast podcasts out for clients, I would say that it's more along the lines of the client who wants me to listen to the entire podcast, to embed 3 music beds, and because they want me to find the perfect spot, and I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. That probably is it's just a very laborious process. It's not necessarily I dislike it. It's just, because sometimes I listen to these podcasts and they're really great, and then I get so enthralled in the podcast. So, but I don't think it's always necessary. That's just the way I do things. So, and what's my favorite part of podcast production? My favorite part is probably the sound designing. If, because creating a podcast is easy if I'm able to pull the audio down of whatever I talked about and then just kind of plug it into my workflow. It would be the sound production, the branding portion. That's really exciting to me. I love doing that type of stuff. Let's see. How many followers should I have before pitching ads? That's an interesting question. Maybe I saved that for another time. I'll answer it right now. Because I got to split. I got to go get my workout on. Let's see. So the answer to that would be, just depends. You're going to have to look at I would say you're going to have to look at how many downloads that you're getting. But I've seen here's the thing. I've seen podcasters who only get like 300 downloads per week and they've sold ads, and they'll sell like per week. They'll say like $25 per week. And that's like $75 a month for a business, to get advertising. Like I said in the earlier part of this particular YouTube live, is that I wouldn't always put my eggs in the advertising basket, because you have to constantly be looking for the advertiser. I would put my bet on starting up some form of a supporter program, a Patreon program, something of that like, and get listeners involved, because you're creating content for them. And if they appreciate the content you're creating for them, then you should be asking at some point in time, I would appreciate it if you donated $2, $5, $10. And depending on those tiers, that can become a more viable way of having a podcast income, okay? Now, if you have sponsorships, I would say that's more icing on the cake. That's the way I would look at that. Silver Fox DJ, thank you for all your knowledge. You're welcome. I'm thinking of doing another one of these in the next, like maybe on a Saturday. We'll see what happens. So here's a story. If you jump onto my email list, go over to my website, theshanman.com. I'll put it in the comments. Go to theshanman.com and get on my email list. And I haven't emailed the list in a while, but I do plan on emailing them and letting them know that I'm thinking about doing these. Maybe I'll do one on Saturday morning for people, since I know more people are home on Saturday, and I can't necessarily do these live streams, in the evening because I'm at work, and it's just it's more difficult for me to do these. So get on my my email list, and I'll be able to I'll email you on that stuff. I would love to start like what I've talked about, a program or like a community very similar to my supporter program, where if you're looking for more answers or you need help in the editing process, I would love to start something like that, but I haven't decided whether or not I want to do that. So we'll see what happens. Rise Above Performance Training. What up? Yeah, I got to get my workout on. So I'll tell you this. I'm gonna have to. I'll go back and I'll look at this Rise Above Performance Training. So I don't know what you do in terms of exercise. Look at me putting it off. I'll be okay. I got some time before I can roll. But during this entire pandemic, so I stopped going to the gym because the gym's closed down, obviously. And then when the gym's closed down, I went out and I started walking here about on a trail close to my house. And on one day, I was walking down this pathway. It's on a canal. And my phone went off, and I went to go turn it off. I think I was going to turn it. I can't even remember. All I know is I had my phone. And the next thing I remember is that I rolled my ankle into the dirt off the pavement, and I sprained my ankle just walking. And so that put me out. So then when the gyms opened back up, I was like, well, I'm going to the gym. I'm not spending this money. So I ended up taking up yoga. And oh man, yoga has done wonders for my ankle over the past 4 or 5 months. I'm actually coming up on 6 months of doing yoga, straight yoga. And I sweat like a pig when I do yoga. It's crazy, man. It's awesome though. But I need to get back out. My ankle is still a little sore, so I can't do too much running, but I do get out and walk. So that's kind of a cool thing. Let's see here. Average Fellows Podcast, you're welcome. Let's see here. Adrian Johnson, I'll try to do more. Again, I would encourage you to go to my website, theshanman.com, so that we can do more of these live feeds so that I can help more people out. Maybe I do an hour's worth and then I do an extra hour's worth for people who come into the community itself. Enjoy this live stream. Very informative. Would love to join another live stream. Hopefully we will get to doing another live stream. Bayerberg, because he's in the UK, wants me to do earlier streams. I will try to do earlier streams if I can. I know that a Saturday morning might work for me. It's a little difficult because I work nights. I go into work at 7 o'clock and I get off at midnight, and then I'm not in bed until like 1:30. And so then some days I wake up at about 8 or 9, and then I got to do my whole thing, my routine. Typically, I'm trying to work out in the morning, but I work out in the evening right now because it's getting darker, so I can have more energy when I go to work. So let's see here. What do we got? ALX 8721. What's up, man? How you doing? Rise above performance. Yeah, that's awesome. Yes, find what you like and go for it. Yeah, man. So yoga it's been such a godsend for me, man. The core strength has improved. I'm so happy that I'm able to do do yoga and build up my core strength, and it has helped alleviate a lot of sciatic pain too. So that's been kind of cool too. So. Okay, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and roll. I've got to go. I've got to get on the mat, and I got to get some exercise in. So I would recommend and encourage, if you want to learn more about podcasting and these live streams, get on my email list, and we will try to do more of these live streams for you. Okay. In the meantime, thanks for the questions. They were great. They were awesome questions. Bearberg, get some rest, my friend. I hope everything is well. Everyone who showed up to the live stream, it's been great to see you. Yes, and don't forget, hit the button down below, the subscribe button and the little bell, so you can get notified when I drop a brand new video. So that would be awesome. Let's see here. Silver Fox DJ. I love yoga. I do it too. Yeah, yoga's been awesome to me. I can't tell you how important it has been in my life. So, okay, everyone, have a great night. Be safe, and we will talk to you guys soon. Take care.